Hi guys, welcome back to the Makeup Hunter. So obviously the cat doesn't talk, it's me, but I am not fit to be on camera today, and I am going to be continuing my collection series. So today is going to be the start of a mammoth video that may end up being split into two parts, so a two-part video within this already lengthy series. So today we are starting looking at my eyeshadow palette collection. I have over 100 eyeshadow palettes, and they are stored across 3 different drawers. So today we're starting on the first drawer, which holds the majority of the palettes, and it may be that I have to do the second and the third drawer in a separate video, but we'll see how we get on. Anyway, I really hope you're enjoying this series. I hope you're enjoying having a nosy through my collection. As I have said in previous videos to this one, this is a way for me to see how my collection stands at the start of 2022. I have some very specific goals in mind for my makeup collection and the way I consume makeup, especially the amount of new makeup that I bring into my life and my collection, and going through and familiarising myself with everything that is in my collection is a good way to help deter me from adding to it or buying new stuff, and so far it's actually working pretty well. So the eyeshadow palettes that I'm going to be showing you today are how I started off 2022. Previous to this video, you may have seen a video where I shared the makeup that my family bought me for my birthday, and I also got donated some makeup from my mum's declutter. I have kept both the new makeup and the makeup from my mum's declutter completely separate because those came to me sort of end of January. So everything that you are seeing in this video is what I had at the very start of the year. So I hope that all makes sense, and this introduction is already far too long, so please do keep watching if it sounds like something you'd be interested in. Please do subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, it means the absolute world to me. Give me a like to let me know that you are enjoying this content that I am creating and putting out. Leave me a comment, I absolutely adore chatting to everybody in the comments, and without further ado, let's get into the video. Okay, so this is my first drawer of eyeshadow palettes, and this is where I keep mainly my high-end palettes and luxury palettes. My other 2 drawers, my one drawer has like drugstore, like BH Cosmetics, Colourpop, that sort of thing. And then my other drawer has my smaller palettes, like some of my Huda Beauty Obsessions palettes and my Dior Quads and things like that. So this is the main bulk of my eyeshadow palettes. So I'm going to just start pulling them out randomly and we'll just go through them. And as I said in the introduction, I doubt that I will be decluttering from any of my palettes because I did quite a decent declutter at the end of 2021, so this is more me familiarising myself with what I've got and giving you a look into my collection as well. So on top we have the Huda Beauty Wild Obsessions, and this is the Tiger palette. This is one of my favourite palettes in my collection. I've really come to adore the Huda Beauty formula, and in these newer Obsessions palettes, these little 9 pans, the formula is absolutely outstanding. Another absolute favourite is the Wild Jaguar. I only bought the Tiger and the Jaguar from the Wild series that she did, and these were the colour stories that sort of stood out in my collection and that I knew that I would get either a lot of use out of or would add to my collection. And this palette is so incredibly stunning. It's smoky, sultry, very glam, very elegant. I absolutely love it. Then another favourite palette of mine is the Charlotte Tilbury Pillow Talk Instant Look. I think this is the Instant Look in a palette, Instant Eye palette. So this is the classic Charlotte Tilbury formula. The mattes are buttery, creamy and pigmented, and the shimmers are so smooth, and they're not overly impactful, but they're a really elegant, classy shimmer. This is a palette that I know that I can rely on if I just want to feel my best and look really well put together. It's just a really easy palette. And then another one that I absolutely love but I haven't got as much use out of is the Bejeweled Eyes to Hypnotise. This was a limited edition Christmas palette, and same formula as the Pillow Talk palette. This is absolutely stunning. The Charlotte Tilbury formula really is something special, and I do think it's worth the price tag, but her colour schemes aren't always the most exciting. Then we've got an older palette in my collection. This is the Dose of Colours Desi and Katie Friendcation palette, and this is one that I keep meaning to pull into a Shop My Stash because I have barely touched this palette and I have had it for quite a while. It's a stunning palette and it's one that deserves a lot more love than I've given it. It's one that I keep thinking about decluttering, but when it comes to actually decluttering it, I just can't quite bring myself to get rid of it. Then we've got the Too Faced, the Born This Way, the Natural Nudes. This is one my mum gave me, and this is such a gorgeous palette. I'm not a huge fan of Too Faced. I don't really have anything from the brand other than what my mum has given me, and I think this is one of the only palettes of theirs that I've ever looked at and thought, yeah, I really want that. It's a super easy everyday palette. The shimmers are, there's like different textures of shimmers. There's like a smooth shimmer, and then you've got the more chunky ones. It's just a really nice palette, and the looks that I can create with this are very soft, pretty easy eyeshadow looks. Then we have, of course, the classic Anastasia Beverly Hills Soft Glam palette. This is another one that I keep meaning to pull into a Shop My Stash because I've not given it the love that it deserves. This colour story is right up my alley. It's the only ABH palette that I've ever really been truly interested in, and when I have used it, I've absolutely loved the looks. It's just not one that I ever think to pull out. One that I have been thinking of a bit lately, and I'm going to put this into a Shop My Stash soon. This is the Melt Cosmetics Smoke Sessions palette. I've never used this palette, I've only swatched it. I think it's so beautiful. Green is my absolute favourite colour, and I think that is why I haven't used it, because it's so pretty, and because I love it so much I'm scared to mess it up and to use it, which is absolutely ridiculous. But I think next time I do a Shop My Stash, I'm going to pull this one and the Gemini palette in, also by Melt Cosmetics. This one I have used, but only once, and I stuck to the brown tones. But yeah, I really want to use these in conjunction with each other, because the Gemini palette is all matte except for 2 shimmers, and then the Smoke Sessions palette is all shimmer except for 2 mattes, so they are like perfect companion palettes. So I really want to do some fun green looks with these soon. Okay, if you can hear any noise, the wind is howling near my window. My window's shut, but you can still hear the wind howling. Then we have the Sigma Ambiance palette. This is an absolute favourite of mine. I absolutely adore this palette. I adore the Sigma formula, and I just think this palette was just so well executed. The brush is amazing quality. The different textures of shimmers are really special. The mattes blend beautifully, and I just absolutely adore these tones. This is a palette that I can just grab and know that I'm gonna like the look that I bring, you know, that I do with it. If I'm going on holiday, it would be the palette that I would take with me, because I would know that I could get a week's worth of looks out of it and not struggle. Another palette that's a little bit outside of my comfort zone, but one that I can't quite seem to part ways with, is the Ace Beauté Blossom Passion palette. Ace Beauté used to be available in the UK on Beauty Bay, but they're not anymore, so I haven't tried the new formula. This is the original Ace Beauté formula. It's a pressed pigment, so the mattes are incredibly pigmented and can be a little bit hard to work with. The shimmers are beautiful, but they do work better with when applied with your finger or a wet brush or over a glitter glue. But the look that I created when I used this palette, I absolutely loved, and it's one that I really do need to use more of. Obviously around Valentine's Day would have been the perfect opportunity to do so. Then I've also got Paradise Fallen from the same Ace Beauté collection. This is a really gorgeous dark purple grungy palette. I have used this one as well, and again I really enjoyed the look with it. This is a very cool toned purple palette, so I'm not usually one to go for cool tones. I prefer warmer tones, but I have been getting more into cool tones lately, so this one would be a great one to pull out, especially this time of year in the colder months. Then a very warm toned autumnal palette is the Ace Beauté Classical Paradise palette. This is a stunning palette. Unfortunately mine did arrive a little bit damaged, but it is a beautiful palette. I absolutely love the grungy greens and mustard tones in here. This mineral shimmer is a really unusual, like, greeny taupe. This is my favourite sort of colour story. I absolutely love it. And again, I'm going to say the same thing about all of the palettes in my collection. They just haven't got the love that they deserve from me. Another one that is outside my comfort zone is the Ace Beauty Oceanic Palette. The greens I adore, but the blues are very outside of my comfort zone. I don't wear blue very often. I find it quite an intimidating colour to work with. But I have used this palette a couple of times, and again loved the looks that I created. The mattes in here are beyond pigmented. You know, you can go too far quite easily with these shades. Less is definitely more, but it's a beautiful palette. My favourite out of the Ace Beauty palettes that I own is the Flare palette. Again, I just love this very autumnal colour story. I love the warm tones, the greens. This shade Acorn is just like a cool toned brown, but it's very unusual. I don't really have anything else like in my collection. Absolutely love this orange shimmer called Firefly. It's a stunning palette. Then we have the Huda Beauty New Nudes palette. This is one that I was, if I wasn't doing a very Colourpop themed Shop My Stash for February, I was going to pull this palette. I've been seeing it pop up quite a lot on the YouTube content that I've been watching, because I've been watching a lot of content creators who focus on using older products, and for some reason this one's been popping up a lot, maybe because of the tones and it being around Valentine's Day, but it just made me think of it and think that I really need to pull this palette out and give it some more love. It doesn't look, I really want the makeup in my collection to look loved on, to look used, and whilst there is disturbance in this palette, I have used it several times, it doesn't look nearly used enough. Then I have also from Huda Beauty the Rose Gold Remastered. This is another one that I have used quite a bit, but I don't think it looks nearly loved on enough. I absolutely love the shimmer formula in here. It's like a cream to powder. The mattes are super blendable, and I just love this colour story. You know, you've got some fun pops of colours. These are appearing a lot brighter in camera than they are in real life. This is like more of a muted mauvey pink than the bright purple that it's looking in camera, and this is much more subdued. This is more of like a burgundy colour, so it's a really stunning palette. And then some newer Huda palettes. We've got the Rose Quartz palette. I just love Huda's formula, I really do. I was very skeptical about the brand for a long time. She wasn't bringing out anything that really caught my eye, and of late I've just been really attracted to her brand and the things that she's putting out, and this palette I just think was genius. You know, it was brought out at a time when I think we were getting an oversaturation of warm tones and greens, and it was different. You know, it's a different kind of purple pink palette. You know, it's very cool toned, very muted, pastel-y, and I just think it's really beautiful. And the shimmers are so unusual. This like cream to powder formula is just really beautiful. And then one of my favourite palettes in my collection, and one that I really wasn't interested in for a very long time, couldn't see the fascination with it, kept putting off getting it, and then I fell in love with it once I had it, and I wished I'd had it in my collection for longer than I have, because I just love this palette. same formula as the Rose Quartz. You know, this here is a creamed powder. These are like a creamy type of shimmer. They're just really stunning. The mattes are super pigmented and easy to blend. Then we have my Pat McGrath Golden Opulence. This is the closest I've come to a Mothership palette, and I got this while it was on sale. It's one that I just never think to use, which is such a shame, because it's a really lovely colour story. It's a very easy colour story, you know, don't have to think too much about it. You've only got 2 mattes, so you've got a crease shade, a deepening shade in a corner, and then 3 beautiful lid shades. But the thing that puts me off this palette is the packaging. I really hate this bulky, awkward packaging, and because of that reason I never use it. If it was just in like a normal packaging like this, I think I'd be way more inclined to pull it. I don't want to get rid of it, but I do have to sort of make a mental note to remind myself to use it. Okay, and left in here we've just got my 2 Vive palettes and my Natasha Denona collection. So here I have the Vive Essentials palette. This is a gorgeous everyday essentials palette. The tones are really well done, really well thought out. You know, you've got cool tones, warm tones, neutrals. You can take this from the most simple, easy daytime kind of look to very glamorous, smoky evening, you know, with the black, the gold, really go to town with that smoky Jamie Genevieve signature look. Quality is impeccable. Really impressed with the formula. Then we have the newest palette from the Vive line, the Muse palette. This one I haven't even used yet, I'm ashamed to say. Or have I? No, I have. I think I've used it once. Which I am, yeah, I've definitely used it once. I've used the shade Bow, Love, Peony and Finery by the looks of things. It's a gorgeous palette. I really love these tones, but I got this palette at a time when I was bringing an awful lot of makeup into my collection, and a lot of it was getting untouched, shoved in my drawer and forgotten about, and that's one of the things that I am trying to get away from this year. A palette that became a very surprise favourite is the Natasha Denona Sunrise palette. This one I got while it was on sale, and I think it is absolutely stunning. Really beautiful, warm toned palette with some fun pops of colour. I thought the look that I created with this palette was stunning. I felt so good in it, and I don't often wear colour, like bright colours, and if I'm going to, it's going to be these mustardy tones, and you know, these fun pops of purple just add a bit of interest. A really gorgeous palette. I'm so glad that I decided to get it. The Natasha Denona Retro, I am very ashamed to say I haven't even used this yet. Like with the Vive Muse palette, I got this at a time when I was pulling a lot of makeup into my collection, and I just swatched 1 or 2 of the shades and shoved it in my drawer and forgot about it, which is a crying shame, because I know this made it onto a lot of people's favourite palette lists. I definitely think I am going to be pulling this into a Shop My Stash very soon. I'm thinking for next month maybe pulling in the Retro Smoke Sessions, I Have a Visitor, the Gemini palette, and maybe a Colourpop or a BH Cosmetics palette. Then we have the Natasha Denona Bronze palette. This is one of my favourite palettes. I absolutely adore these bronzy warm tones. I love the amount of shimmers in this palette. You know, in comparison to mattes, I do like a nice balance in a palette, but I do like to have perhaps one or two more shimmers than mattes, and this is just perfect in my eyes. I absolutely love this palette. Then kind of the cool tones sister, we have the Glam palette, the Natasha Denona Glam palette. This is another one that I absolutely adore, but it is very different for me. I am definitely a fan of warm tones over cool tones, but I just find this palette really stunning to look at. The looks that I've created have turned out really beautifully, very smoky, very glam, kind of taking me outside of my comfort zone, but in a totally different way to like the more colourful palettes in my collection. But yeah, the formula of these is impeccable. Natasha Denona eyeshadows are probably my absolute favourite eyeshadow formula. Then we have the Natasha Denona Zendo palette, a palette that I absolutely adore but haven't given nearly enough love. I think I've perhaps used it once or twice. Definitely I'm way more comfortable over this side of the palette, but I do think these are some really fun, really interesting pops of colour. But when I look at this palette, I really do think of spring and summer. So I think this is a palette that I'm definitely going to get a lot more use out of in those warmer months. And if you hear a purring, my cat has made herself very comfortable next to my elbow in the patch of sunlight. My absolute favourite palette in my entire collection, Natasha Denona Metropolis. If I was to describe me in eyeshadow form, it would be this palette. I just think this is the most beautiful thing in the world. It's just stunning. I love everything about it. I love the greens, the warm tones, the browns. I think the pops of colour in here in these rich jewel tone blues are really fun, really interesting, and add another dimension to it. And I also love the idea that, you know, the inspiration behind this palette. You know, the New York in the 20s and 30s. I just think it's a stunning work of art. I really do. And then the last palette in here, and one of my very prized possessions next to the Metropolis, is the Bieber palette. This was one that was on my wish list for years, and I finally got it in my dirty little mitts. I just love this palette. It's my perfect neutral palette, and one that I can do the most simple neutral daytime looks to the most sultry evening glam looks. There's a lot of my favourite formula within this palette, the cream to powder, and I just love it. I think it's perfect. So that is everything from this drawer, and I think I am going to split this video into 2 parts. So that will be it for this, and then we'll move on to my drugstore palettes and my smaller quads and singles in the next video. So thanks very much for watching. Really do hope you enjoyed this video. Please give me a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Leave me a comment. Let's chat, let's get to know each other. Subscribe if you haven't already, and that's it. That's everything. Keep loving yourself, keep loving each other, make sure you're taking your meds and looking after yourself, and lots of love, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye guys.